Shalom. All praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the bishops, and the elders of GMS who rules well. Peace, salutation to the elect. My name is Ainal. The title of this video is Babylon is Through, right? And this is pretty much the end of Esau Edom's rule, the end of his kingdom. The downfall of it is what we're witnessing, right? We're witnessing pursuing to Joel, the third chapter of the week, saying that they are strong, right? And they're coming up against Babylon the Great and Israel, because pursuant to prophecy, Babylon the Great and Israel will be tied together, you know, and Israel will be the cause of Babylon the Great being drawn out to this World War III, which we can see happening, right? Because what? Let me grab this. Habakkuk 2. Shameful spewing is being put on Esau's glory. Why? Because they're backing Israel and the crimes that Israel is committing. Right. This is Habakkuk 2:15. It's I'm gonna go to NLT. Habakkuk 2:15. NLT. What sorrow awaits you who make your neighbors drunk? You force your cup on them so you can gloat over their shameful nakedness. But soon it will be your turn to be disgraced. Come, drink, and be exposed. Drink from the cup of the Lord's judgment, and all your glory will be turned into shame. See, this is what's happening to Babylon the Great, and that's why these nations are no longer respecting them, right? Because Babylon the Great was supposed to be standing for what? USA aid and supporting people and helping the world and being that global superpower of peace or whatever the case may be, but it turns out, pursuant to scripture, like I said, Babylon the Great is tied to these JOOs who are now committing a heavy crime over there in the land of Israel, right? And the world is upset about that, and America is backing them. Let me grab this. This is Jeremiah. And this is Jeremiah 50 and verse 45. It says, therefore, KJV, therefore hear ye the counsel of the Lord Yahweh that he have taken against Babylon, and his purposes that he hath proposed against the land of Chaldeans. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. Right. So the least of the flock is talking about these JOOs, right? These 1948ers. And as you can see, what are they doing? They're striking and attacking their neighbors because they have a agenda to issue in a greater Israel. Right, so they're doing a land cleansing. They want those people gone from what they claim, what they say to be their land. Anyway, let's go into Nahum 3. So because they want that greater Israel, that's what they're doing. So let me grab this. Nahum 3. It says, "Woe to the bloody city! It is full of lies and robbery. The prey departeth not." Right? What is that? That's Babylon. That's America. It is full of city. Why? Because they rape, robbed, and murder their way to get to where they're at. That's why the scriptures say that Esau's blessing, the so-called white man, right? The self-proclaimed white man, Esau, his blessing is the sword. Let me see if I can grab that. Genesis. Genesis. This is Genesis 27 and sorry, Slocky, I'm just looking for it. All right, I start at 37. 38. It says Genesis 27:38, and Esau said unto his father, "Hast thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, my father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And Isaac, his father, answered and said unto him, "Behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven from above." So Esau was given the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven from above. So he controls what? The land. He controls the skies. He even has something called the Space Force. I doubt any from what I know, any other nation has something called the Space Force. It says, verse 40, "And by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. Right. So basically, in verse 40 here is saying that Esau will live by the sword. So that's how he went out and raped, robbed, and murdered everybody to get what he wanted. He didn't ask, for he just took it. So back to Nahum 3:1, right here. Woe to the bloody city, is full of lies and robbery. The prey departeth not, the noise of a whip, and the noise of the rattling of the wheels, and of the prancing horses, and of the jumping chariots. The horsemen lifted up both the bright sword and the glittering spear, and there is a multitude of slain, and a great number of carcasses, and there is none end of their corpses. They stumble upon their corpses. See, and this is the manner of how which Babylon the Great liveth, by the sword. It says, because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, the mistress of witchcraft, that selleth nations through her whoredoms, and families through her witchcraft. Verse 5. It says, behold, I am against thee, saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts, and I will discover thy skirts upon thy face, and I will show the nations thy nakedness, and the kingdoms thy shame. See? And what? Donald Trump, this cruel Lord, pursuant to Isaiah 19, is ruling, as a fierce king, and what? Making threats to basically the whole world and not standing on his threats. Saying wild things like, we'll rain down on you, a mass force of destruction, and things like that. And then basically not doing nothing at all, just lying, sending threats to his enemies like Iran, telling them, Hamas, or telling them to release the hostages at, this period of time. And if you don't do it, there's going to be a problem. But then nothing happens. They don't release the hostages, and Trump doesn't, do anything about it. This is Joel 3. It says, I start at 9, Joel 3:9. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war. Wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. It says, beat your plowshares into swords. So it's no longer a time of trading and increasing, land and things like that. It says in verse 10, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say I am strong. And basically the weak is all the other nations that America has bullied, throughout their age and their empire. Kingdom usually lasts for about 250 years, and America has, they're on borrowed time now, right? Trump is trying to celebrate next year that 250 period mark, with a celebration, but it's going to be, it's going to be it's basically going to be a celebration for the world, because Lord willing, Babylon the Great is destroyed before then, and we're celebrating that, Esau is no longer here. The whole hammer of the earth that, that did us wicked the nations, he's no longer here. He's put into slavery, where the case may be. So anyway, back to verse 10 in Joel 3, it says, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears, let the weak say I am strong. And that's exactly what's happening. America is trying to attack people and rule people, but they're saying no longer.
The Yemeni army is already saying that it has targeted the USS Truman. Every time the United States and Israel and the UK conduct these strikes on Yemen, Ansar Allah respond. How are they able to do this? If this goes weeks to months, like Trump is saying, there will be many instances for the first time, because Ansar Allah mainly targeted the Israeli regime because the Israeli regime was conducting an ongoing genocide. This is likely to be an even bigger escalation. How is Ansar Allah still doing this, given that they're supposed to be, as Donald Trump says, met with overwhelming force by the United States?
Well, the United States does not have overwhelming force as it used to have a couple of decades ago. And Ansar Allah's assets, I don't know if how long we got cut off, or if we got cut off or not, but Ansar Allah's assets are all underground. It's not accessible to the United States, and the country is huge. This is not Gaza, and it's not Lebanon. The area is controlled by Ansar Allah. They are the government, and it is mountainous, and they have their assets are deep underground. And obviously, they are getting assistance from Iran. Iran does not hide that, but also the people of Yemen are very sophisticated. They have smart people. If they're taught how to make missiles, they'll learn how to make missiles. If they tell them, if they're taught how to improve those missiles, they'll improve those missiles. Despite the poverty, despite a decade of genocidal war imposed by the West on Ansar Allah and the people of Yemen, they are very sophisticated. They have surface-to-air weapons. They brought down $500 million worth of American drones.
You see that? $500,000. The Houthis have brought down $500 million. Let me see what he said.
worth of American drones. So imposed by the West on Ansarullah and the people of Yemen. They are very sophisticated. They have surface-to-air weapons. They have brought down $500 million worth of American drones.
See, they have brought down $500 million of American drones. See, what is that? That's the weak now saying that they're strong. America can no longer go out and just bomb people, without them retaliating. These individuals are bombing America's ships passing through, to get to Israel and all of that. So this is Nahum 3 back over here. Nahum 3 and 5. Behold, I am against thee, saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts, and I will discover thy skirts upon thy face, and I will show the nations thy nakedness, and the kingdoms thy shame. And I will cast abominable filth upon thee, and make thee vile, and will set thee as a gazing stock. And that's what happened. If you go back to the beginning of all this pretty much happened, what it was, those biolabs over in Ukraine, they've been found out to be doing something sneaky over there in Ukraine. You got the dude Bill Hates and all of that. Regarding that situation, it's a touchy situation for them, but they have been found out to be the ones that's causing most of the problems on the planet Earth. It says in verse 7, and it shall come to pass that all they that look upon thee shall flee from thee and say, Nineveh is laid waste. Who will bemoan her? When shall I seek comforters for her? See, so Babylon the Great ultimately will be destroyed. It says, art thou better than Populus? No, that was situate among the rivers that had the waters around about, whose rampart was the sea, and her wall was from the sea. Ethiopia and Egypt were her strength, and it was infinite. Put in Lubum were thy helpers. Yet was she carried away, she went into captivity. Her young children also were dashed in pieces at the top of all the streets, and they cast lots for her honorable men, and all her great men were bound in chains. Thou also shalt be drunken, thou shalt be hid, thou also shalt seek strength because of the enemy. Right, verse 11 says, Babylon the Great will seek strength because of the enemy. What is that? In the NLT, it says, and you, Nineveh, which is Babylon the Great, will also stagger like a drunkard. You will hide for the fear of the attacking enemy. And, pretty much what is Babylon the Great doing now? The Iron Dome, they're trying to build up defenses, get ready for the enemy because they know, it says in verse 12, all thy strongholds shall be like fig trees when the first ripe figs, if they be shaken, they shall even fall into the mouth of the eater. So Babylon the Great will be destroyed, along with his strongholds and, whatever he builds up. Let me play a little bit of this real quick.
That's a very sophisticated air defense system. They have, surface to sea missiles. They have surface to surface missiles. They have drones. They have, these weapons are made in Yemen. They've been taught how to make them. They've been given the technology, but they're capable of using it despite the circumstances. So the Americans, this is going to be very costly for them. Whether the aircraft carriers hit or not, the amount of money that the Americans are going to have to spend to defend those aircraft carriers and naval ships is huge. And remember, they lost, an F-18 that was shot down by one of their own, they claimed was shot down by one of their own missiles a few months back during the later days of Biden, during the clashes that were going on between Ansarullah, the Yemeni armed forces, and the U.S. So this is just going to, I think, it's going to be humiliating for Trump. But when it comes to our region, corporate media is with Trump. When it comes to Israel, when it comes to killing Muslims or brown people or Christians from our part of the region, they show no sympathy for Christians in our region. They destroyed the Christian population in Iraq. They destroyed much of the Christian population in Syria. They've allowed the Israelis to basically expel most Christians from Palestine. They have no sympathy for our part of the world, for anyone really. So I'm quite confident that Trump will not be able to succeed in Yemen, and Yemen is going to become just more popular. One of the interesting things about this war, and war is horrible, but and I don't mean the war in Iraq was Saddam Hussein was a monster, but the Americans, they supported him and then they turned against him. So even though the U.S. war wasn't legitimate, but Saddam Hussein was not a good guy. The war in Afghanistan, the war in Libya, the same. It was not legitimate. But this is a war about one side wanting to stop a genocide and the other side insisting to support a genocide. This is, even Ukraine, while I sympathize with the Russians, I don't, the Americans carried out a coup, they lied and expanded NATO. I don't have sympathy for NATO or the United States anywhere on this planet. But in the case of Yemen, or Lebanon for that sake, Hezbollah supporting and sacrificing for Yemen or for Gaza.
Right, and pretty much this was for your viewing pleasure. While I go through these scriptures, basically, it's news all over the world, breaking news of basically, the shameful spewing on Babylon the Great and how they're failing so miserably here at their end. That's what the scriptures say. Let me grab it. I think it's 51. This is Jeremiah 51 and I just started at 6 or 5. It's Jeremiah 51 and 5. It says, "For Israel have not been forsaken, nor Judah of his power, of the Lord Yahweh of hosts. Though their land was filled with sin against the Holy One of Israel." It says, "Flee out of the midst of Babylon and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity, for this is the time of the Lord's vengeance. He will render up unto her a recompense." It says, "Babylon have been a golden cup in the Lord's hand that made all the earth drunken. Nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad," right? And that's exactly what's happening. Babylon the Great, through their policies and things like that, and the things that they pushed out, it is now becoming basically bullshit. They're not like the international court or whatever that's going against the JOOs. America and Israel is saying, no, that doesn't matter. So basically everything that America has set up is fake. It says verse 8, "Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for her? Take balm for her pain, if so be she may be healed." It says, "We will have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her and let us go everyone into his own country. For her judgment reaches unto heaven and is lifted up even to the skies." See, there is no healing for Babylon the Great. And Babylon the Great was a golden cups in the Lord's hand that made the earth drunken, which is these nations. But now what? We're at the end and things are, switching up. Grab this. It says, Nahum 3 and 12, "All that strongholds shall be like fig trees, and the first ripe figs, if they be shaken, they shall even fall into the mouth of the eater." So, basically what the Most High has proposed against Babylon the Great to be destroyed, it will happen. It says, "Behold, thy people in the midst of thee are women. The gates of thy land shall be set wide open unto thine enemies. The fire shall devour thy bars," right? So these plans to set up defenses like the Iron Dome that the JOOs have, it won't help Babylon the Great at all. It says, "Draw thee waters for the siege. Fortify thy strongholds, go into clay and tread the mortar, make strong the brickland." And that was verse 14, Nahum 3. In the NLT, it says, "Get ready for the siege, store up water, strengthen the defenses, go into the pits to trample clay and pack it into molds, making brick to repair the walls." So Babylon the Great is what now? Trying to bring in this peace and safety, trying to build up their defenses, get more money to build up the defenses. Like I keep saying, the Iron Dome, they want to grab that Iron Dome. Trump said he rebuilt the military. Says verse 15, it says, "There shall the fire devour thee, the sword shall cut thee off, it shall eat thee up like the cankerworm. Make thyself many as the cankerworm, make thyself many as the locust." Right. So that goes into the draft. They're trying to draft people. In the NLT, it says, "But the fire will devour you, the sword will cut you down, the enemy will consume you like locusts, devouring everything they see. There will be no escape, even if you multiply like swarming locusts." Right. So, Trump said he rebuilt the military, you got the best military, whatever the case may be, but they're still going to need a draft, right, for this World War III. So the scriptures say, even if you multiply yourself like swarming locusts, you still going to be destroyed. The draft is not going to save you, right? That's what the scriptures say. And I'll grab it over here real quick. First Thessalonians, because even Trump now, I'm the president of peace. He just sent a letter to Iran talking about, in the letter, he's like, "I'm the president of peace." First Thessalonians 5 and 3 says, "For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as to fell upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape." See, there's no escape for Babylon the Great. There's no healing Babylon the Great, just like we read in Jeremiah 51 and 9. Verse 16 in Nahum 3 says, "Thou hast multiplied thy merchants above the stars of heaven. The cankerworm spoileth and flieth away." Right, that goes into what those merchant ships that's going to be mourning for Babylon the Great. when she's destroyed. It says, verse 17, thy crown are as the locusts, and they and thy captains as the great grasshoppers, which camp in the hedges in the cold day, but when the sun arises, they flee away, and their place is not known where they are. You know, rather in the NLT. Nahum 3:17 NLT says, your guards and officials are also like swarming locusts. They crowd together in the hedges on a cold day, but like locusts, they fly away when the sun comes up. All of them will fly away and disappear, right? So what? When that heat starts to come, the scriptures say, what that their men are like women; they have to born to fight. Verse 18 says, thy shepherds slumber, O king of Assyria. Thy nobles shall dwell in the dust. Thy people is scattered upon the mountains, and no man gathered them. See, so just like the scriptures say in Isaiah 47, let me grab it real quick. It's going to be complete chaos. People are going to be scattered, all over the place. This is Isaiah 47. Actually, let's see where I can find that at. Jeez. It's Isaiah 13, Slakia, right? Isaiah 13. And start at Isaiah 13, and we'll start at 12. It's Isaiah 13 and 12. It says, I will make a man more precious than fine gold, even a man than the golden wedge of Ophir. So what is that? That's the time we're in now, right? Through this wisdom and knowledge, the understanding of knowing what's going on and being protected by the Most High Yahweh Bashmi Awashai, right? Being the hopeful elect, the Most High is going to make you precious than fine gold. Why? Because you'll be a hedge and protection to the women, right? And whoever else, may come around, where the case may be. If you're that individual, if the Most High give you those spiritual powers, spiritual power, to stand, you'll be more precious than fine gold. It says in verse 13, therefore I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place, and the wrath of the Lord Yahweh of hosts, and in the day of his fierce anger. And it shall be as the chased roe, and as a sheep that no man taketh up, they shall every man turn to his own people, and flee every one into his own land. It says, everyone that is found shall be thrust through, and everyone that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword. Right? So that's what it's talking about. Get that in the NLT, Isaiah 13 and 14. It says, everyone in Babylon will run about like a hunted gazelle, like sheep without shepherds. They will try to find their own people and flee to their own land. Anyone who is captured will be cut down, run through with a sword. So it's going, like I said, complete chaos here in Babylon the Great. Going back to where we were at in Nahum, in verse 18, Nahum 3 and 18, thy shepherds slumber, O king of Assyria. Thy nobles shall dwell in the dust. Thy people is scattered upon the mountains, and no man gathered them. It says, there is no healing of thy bruise. Thy sword is grievous. I'm sorry. There is no healing of thy bruise. Thy wound is grievous. All that hear the bruit of thee shall clap their hands over thee, for upon whom have not thy wickedness passed continually. And I'll grab that NLT. So Nahum 3:19, it says, there is no healing for your wound. Your injury is fatal. All who hear of your destruction will clap their hands for joy. Where can anyone be found who has not suffered from your continual cruelty? Right? So even in these last days, as Isaiah 19 unfolds, and the nation start to hate this whore, which is Babylon the Great, everyone's gonna be happy as hell, when Babylon the Great is destroyed. Let's see some more what he got here.
This is a war about one side opposing genocide and the other side insisting on carrying out or supporting genocide. it's unbelievable.
As we're talking about Yemen standing up for Gaza and for Palestine, we are also seeing just at every point, the Trump administration, the United States as a whole, is having a hard time navigating the terrain of Israel pushing for what it wants, which is, of course, is more expansion. The media is with Trump because all of them want to keep their foothold despite all the rhetoric about withdrawing troops, ending wars. The fact is that the United States wants to keep its foothold in West Asia. It wants to support Israel 150% to do so. At every turn, there are these immense crises that are exploding, and Ansar Allah in Yemen is just one of them that it seems like the United States has dove deep into.
I think the region is in a very dangerous situation.
Yeah. Let me get this Isaiah 47, right? Babylon is stuck between a rock and a hard place, all right? It ain't no saving it. There's no way out. It's only forward, right? And that's gonna be what? War and destruction. Let me start at Isaiah 47 and 7. It says, "And thou saidest, I shall be a lady forever, so that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart, neither didst remember the latter end of it. Therefore hear now this, thou that art given to pleasures, that dwellest carelessly, that saith in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. But these two things shall come to thee in a moment, and one day the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon thee in their perfection, for the multitude of thy sorceries and for the great abundance of thine enchantments." And why is that? Because of the great destruction that's coming upon Babylon the Great through these nuclear weapons, right? These nuclear warheads. It says, "For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge it hath perverted thee. And thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me." Verse 11 says, "Therefore shall evil come upon thee, thou shalt not know from whence it riseth, and mischief shall fall upon thee, and thou shalt not be able to put it off. And desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know." See, so hey, Trump keeps saying, he has inherited a mess. He's trying to bring peace out of this situation that he can't get himself out of, right? Because this is the downfall of America. The Most High goes on to say, stand now with thine enchantments. The Most High Yahweh, it says, "Stand now with thine enchantments, and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. If so be, thou shalt be able to profit. If so be, thou mayest prevail." So the Most High Yahweh is saying, yo, go ahead and continue doing things that has been helping you, and see if it continue to help you. Which the answer is no.
Because a lot of what's happening is driven by internal Israeli politics and Netanyahu's own troubles inside Palestine. And because
you hear that, so they went from talking about Yemen, Israel, Iran, Hamas, everything, and they're saying a lot of what's happening is because of what? That's what we wanted to. Well, I said again, the least of the flock drawing them out. Babylon Greek. This is Jeremiah 50 and 45. It says, "Therefore hear ye the counsel of the Lord Yahweh, that he have taken against Babylon, and his purposes that he have proposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them." See, a lot of what's happening is because of the JOOs.
Because of that, I think these wars came about. Before the war in Lebanon, I was telling people that I think that there will be war because he has to have war. And then Syria, I think the same. I don't think Syria is going to end well for Israel. I don't think it's going to end well for Turkey or Qatar either. Even though Israel and the Americans and the Israelis definitely want to balkanize Syria, but I don't think they'll succeed. But Turkey getting a part of Syria and the Israelis getting another part. In the long run, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think anything that he's done over the past year and a half has been good for Israel. They can, just like in Ukraine, they can pretend that they won the war and say, "Oh, Hezbollah has been crushed and Hamas has been crushed and Ansar Allah has been crushed. Everyone's been crushed and Iran has no weapons. Iran is defenseless." They can say that, but it's just like in Russia. They said that for 3 years, and now look at the situation in Ukraine today. So Netanyahu may need war, and if he ultimately decides to do something, then the situation will escalate. If he attacks Iran, it is going to change the situation dramatically. And if the United States,
yeah, I just read it. "The least of the flock shall draw out Babylon the Great." So hey, and if he attacks what he just said, Iran, what is that going to lead to? World War III, right? This Revelations 11 and 14. It says, "The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. See, that's the time we're in, right? Even title here says Trump and Israel humiliated, you know? Hey, so that shameful feeling is put on Babylon the Great. Israel is gonna make them go to war, and they're gonna get destroyed in World War III. You know, Lord willing, the video has been edifying. I'll say shalom to the elect, which consists of men, women, and children. Shalom.